Dan Abrams, and this is Court Case.
Ready to take your play?
Yeah! I'll kill all you live. I hope you die in prison as well.
First up in Fort Worth, Texas, for the trial of Glenn McCurley. The 78-year-old was charged with capital murder after advancements in DNA technology linked him to a cold case homicide from nearly 50 years earlier. In 1974, 17-year-old Carla Walker was abducted from a parked vehicle after her boyfriend who was inside was pistol whipped by an assailant. Carla was then kidnapped, raped, and strangled to death. Her body was discovered in a culvert 3 days later. The case remained cold for nearly 5 decades until 2019, when Fort Worth police sent the bra Carla was wearing to a lab for advanced DNA testing, which ultimately linked Glenn McCurley to the crime. At trial, McCurley pleaded not guilty to the murder, and one of the first witnesses to take the stand was Carla's former boyfriend, Rodney McCoy, now 65 years old, who was with her in the car the night she was abducted.
We were going to a Valentine's Day dance, and it was at the high school. Parking lot was full of just high school students. I was in the driver's seat, and Carla had put her back against the passenger door.
The next thing he recalled was the passenger door being ripped open and being struck in the head with a pistol, leaving him dazed and incapacitated by the blow.
I'm not sure how many times I got hit. I believe it was more than once.
45 years later, Rodney still recalls the last time he saw Carla.
Carla turned her face to me, and I can visualize, and said, "Rodney, go get Dad. Go get my dad." It's the last words I heard from Carla.
With emotions running high in a courtroom filled with family and friends of both the victim and McCurley, no one could have expected what happened next.
There's a charge of capital murder. Do you understand that charge? To that you may...
McCurley originally pled not guilty, but after presenting the judge a surprise written confession, he changes his plea and admits to the murder in the courtroom. In the gallery, friends and family of the victim, who were not expecting the guilty plea, can be seen embracing. Also in attendance, McCurley's own family, including his wife and son. And soon after, the judge follows up with McCurley's sentence.
Upon your plea of guilty and the judicial confession and all of the evidence before the court finds you guilty of capital murder. I set you to life in the institutional division of the Texas Department of Criminal Justice.
But before living out the rest of his days in prison, he must first face the victim's sister.
You did the right thing by pleading guilty, but it should have happened a long time ago. She didn't deserve that. You had so many choices that night. You didn't have to kill her. You did not have to kill her. It's been hell. And what you've done now, Mr. McCurley, is taken all the pain and everything we went through and put it on your family now until the day they die. Because they're going to live with this too.
Next, we go to Wichita, Kansas for the sentencing of Michael Gaines. He's been convicted of battery against a law enforcement officer. Gaines was at a county jail for an unrelated charge when he got into an altercation with another prisoner. When two guards tried to intervene, he fought back and allegedly spit in the officer's face. He was found guilty, and the state is asking for a sentence of 10 years. Gaines appears before Judge Rebecca Pilshaw, who speaks to the defendant about his actions.
All the evidence showed deliberately.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. The words were that you deliberately were hawking up.
I didn't hawk up no saliva, okay? That's and you're gonna believe those lies. That's what I'm talking about. I didn't hawk up no celebrity. You're gonna believe a lie because they wearing uniform.
The judge attempts to bring some order to the proceedings.
Look at me.
It's
I'm
like
tired of this.
you ain't gotta scream at me. You're gonna raise your voice at me?
Gaines doesn't appear to be backing down from the judge, but it's nothing compared to what he has in store for Assistant DA Kevin O'Connor.
You raise your voice to me, I raise my voice to you. You just in a row.
I appreciate Mr. Gaines making my point for me.
You punk.
Very well received. And
Maggot mother.
I don't think he's a tough guy now. But I think
you'll be a I get sentenced,
I think Mr. Gaines is forfeited.
I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go. You punk.
I'm talking. Courtroom. Take out of the courtroom.
Judge Pilshaw steps in, has Gaines removed. But before heading back to his cell, Gaines manages to get off a few more insults.
He's a maggot.
You're a tough guy.
He's a maggot, punk. You should have died when you was a baby.
Yeah.
Maggot.
Anytime, Mr. Gaines.
Shut up, punk. He's a maggot. You should have died when you was a baby. Stillborn.
The judge decides to go beyond the 10 years and sentences Gaines to 13 years in a state prison. Next, we're outside the Maroochydore Magistrates Court in Queensland, Australia, where local police chief Darren Edwards is holding a press conference.
Damage there. I'm not 100% on that.
When all of a sudden, he hears a ruckus, steps away from the microphones, and says, "G'day, mate," to this man in red. This is Laszlo Fekete, a 39-year-old Hungarian here on a student visa, and who was just released from a court watch house on a public nuisance charge. Fekete was allegedly harassing a teenage girl nearby when her father found out and began chasing him. As it turns out, luckily Edwards, a former rugby player, was on the scene.
He's been inappropriate to my daughter. Coppers are coming! Coppers are coming!
Just calm down.
Fekete was just released for a similar incident involving inappropriate comments to a young woman, so police are more than familiar with him.
Bear! Bear! Help me! Oh, it's hurting me! Stand up. I did nothing. I did nothing, man. I'm innocent. Please show it to the news.
Next time Laszlo visits the courthouse, he'll have to tackle his own legal issues, as he's charged with public nuisance and unlawful stalking, and must pay a fine of $300. As for Edwards, he suffered a gash to his head, but no major injuries. When asked about the tackle, he said it comes with a job, and that his suit was due for a dry cleaning anyway. Next, we're in Virginia Beach, Virginia, for the trial of Joseph Merlino. The 31-year-old was charged with first-degree murder for allegedly killing his estranged girlfriend and mother of his young daughter on Valentine's Day by 35-year-old victim Ellie Tran arriving at the home she shared with her mother around 8 p.m. After exiting the car, a man believed to be Merlino ambushes her behind it, stabs her in the leg with a syringe. Ellie can be seen briefly pursuing her assailant, then returns to the home where her mother called 911. Ellie Tran would not survive the attack. She died the following day of cyanide poisoning while in the hospital. Merlino maintained his innocence, claiming he was out of town at the time and not the person in the video. But eyewitness accounts from Tran's mother, as well as a longtime neighbor, both placed him near the scene moments after the crime. And his computer history showed searches related to making cyanide. Prosecutors argued Merlino was angry over a bitter custody battle for the couple's daughter, and after a 5-day trial, he was found guilty of first-degree murder. But just a day before his scheduled sentencing, he appears optimistic during an interview conducted from jail.
It was a huge mistake for justice. and the wrong person sitting right now. I'm not only hoping to get my name cleared, I'm hoping that this insidious justice that has been brought over these past 2 years won't fall into someone else's hands. And hopefully I can get some case laws out of it under my name.
But the following day, just prior to sentencing, Merlino appears quite different. Covered by a blanket, he appears to be shaking uncontrollably and is unresponsive. And while foaming at the mouth at the defense table, a Commonwealth attorney questions the doctor who examined him earlier that morning, asking if the entire episode is just an act. The doctor testified that Merlino had no physical condition that could have caused the symptoms, but stated they could be induced by stress. Sentencing was ultimately postponed until the following week, when a seemingly healthy Joseph Merlino was given a life sentence for the murder of Ellie Tran. The victim's mother would take custody of the couple's 3-year-old child.
You stand before me at your own free will and consent.
We're in Freehold, New Jersey, where Judge Katie Gummer has made the unusual or perhaps unheard of decision to move legal proceedings from her majestic wood-paneled courtroom to the tiled walls of the courthouse bathroom. The reason? 26-year-old Brian Schultz and his soon-to-be bride, 21-year-old Marie, when Brian received a phone call from his mom, who was supposed to be in attendance. She was having an asthma attack. First responders soon arrived to stabilize Mom with oxygen and also suggest an idea. Bring the wedding to Mom in the bathroom. That's right. This couple is about to say I do in the courthouse loo.
Stand before me in happy anticipation of your marriage vows, which we are about to witness. Brian's, you of your own free will and consent, take Maria to be your lawfully wedded wife to live together in the holy estate of matrimony.
And the hissing you hear in the background, that's Mom's oxygen tank, and she's doing fine, just off camera.
Maria, you of your own free will and consent, take Brian, your lawfully wedded husband to live together in the holy estate of matrimony. I do, by the authority vested in me by the laws of the state of New Jersey, pronounce them married. You may kiss your spouse. All right.
Next, we head to a sentencing in Detroit, Michigan. The defendants are Ebony McEwen Ross, age 28, and Shanta Anderson, 23. They've pled guilty to second-degree murder in the shooting death of an auto parts store manager. 7 months earlier, as seen in this surveillance footage, the two entered the store looking to rob the place. Anderson then pulled a gun, and the two forced a number of employees to the floor and began emptying the cash register. That's when 69-year-old James Holler entered the scene. Former Marine and Vietnam vet, trying to help his co-workers. But he was shot once in the head. He later died at the hospital. The two left with $100 and escaped in a car driven by 38-year-old Leviticus Butler, who later claimed he was in a love triangle with the women. In fact, the defendants were reportedly in the store to steal money in order to buy Butler a birthday present. The trio were arrested 2 weeks later, and McEwen Ross and Anderson pled guilty, hoping to avoid the maximum sentence of life in prison. Before a packed gallery that includes Haller's wife, Patricia, family members deliver impact statements, beginning with James's son, Christopher.
And if at all in my power, I'm going to make sure you spend every single hours. And that's my goal.
Next, it's Haller's wife, now widow, who has a powerful message for the woman who pulled the trigger and ended her husband's life.
You don't know what you did, young lady. Do you understand me? You don't know what you did. And I wish I could get to you to hang you in here today.
But Haller wants more. She wants her own form of justice.
I want to get her. Yes, do you? I want to get her. You just don't know how I want to get you. You don't know how I want to get you, man.
Once calm is restored, Anderson delivers a statement of her own, but no apology.
I want to say that people make mistakes, and your mistakes don't define who you are as a person.
For James Howler's murder, Anderson's ultimately sentenced to 30 to 60 years in prison, plus 2 years for a firearm charge. McHugh and Ross received a sentence of 21 to 50 years in prison. And Butler, who was prepared to testify against his 2 girlfriends, pled guilty to being an accessory and was sentenced to probation. Next, we're in Hastings, Minnesota for a child custody hearing. It's the second day of trial, and before official proceedings begin, attorney Michelle McDonald, who's representing the mother in the case, approaches the court reporter. McDonald then allegedly accuses the reporter of inaccurately recording the prior day's testimony. She then announces if the court reporter can't do her job, she'll do it. After returning to her table, she pulls out a camera and takes a photo of the courtroom. McDonald's reason for snapping the photo is unclear, but a courtroom deputy takes notice. First, he reminds the attorney that taking photos is prohibited in the district courtroom. Then he confiscates her camera. After what appears to be some heated back and forth, things settle down and the hearing proceeds. But 40 minutes later, during a recess, deputies reapproach McDonald, and they've got some bad news for her. She's receiving a contempt citation for taking photos in the courtroom. They escort her out to a holding area to complete the necessary paperwork. But once there, she refuses to cooperate or give any of her personal information, so she's placed in custody. She's then given a treatment typically reserved only for violent offenders. Under arrest and handcuffed to a wheelchair, refusing to stand or walk on her own. McDonald, who appears surprisingly calm given her compromising situation, refuses to speak to Judge David Knutson or present for her client. Following the bizarre incident, McDonald filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against Judge Knutson and county personnel, alleging improper treatment while in the courtroom and during her 36-hour detainment following the hearing. The lawsuit was ultimately dismissed, and the tables turned against McDonald. First, she received a 60-day suspension and 2 years probation for, among other things, repeatedly talking over Judge Knutson and for taking photos in the courtroom without approval. The Minnesota Supreme Court would later suspend McDonald's law license indefinitely for falsely impugning the integrity of the judge in the original case, David Knutson. That's it for this edition of Court Cam. I'm Dan Abrams. Thanks for watching.